Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Today we've got a show about going to the moon, the 49th anniversary of Apollo 17 on its way to the moon right now on December 9th, December 8th today is, 1972, our last footprints on the moon to be made. And we wanted to emphasize today the distance scale to the moon and Mars as we're talking about with the Artemis program going back to the moon. Why haven't we been back in 49 years? Well, one of the reasons is, of course, money, but that money fuels the important technology that must be not only double checked, but triple checked. And that is one of the big deals why we've not gone back to the moon is it's not easy. So we're trying to go back to the moon. Our NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, says now it's more like 2025. With a woman and a man, and maybe a man of different heritage, African American or so forth, might be also the next man on the moon with the first woman. Well, we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about going 49 years ago in the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous system that was hard fought for by a man named John Hobault, a real unsung hero of the American space program. But before I get into that, I've got my Earth globe here. I got a moon globe here to give you a nice demonstration on the distance from here to the moon and just how far is the International Space Station right now off of our Earth, because it has 3 new visitors this morning. I got Marty Winkle behind the keyboards there doing our computer stuff. Trekkie Techie Jessica Galloway's nearby in case we need any help. But this is something Marty Winkle and I have been doing since March 2020 to bring to you our museum during the pandemic, so you knew that we weren't going to lay down. We still wanted to give you a look inside our museum. And now this has turned into a wonderful program of space history and space knowledge. And the knowledge I'm spewing is out of my head. I don't have a teleprompter or anything in front of me, so forgive me if I make a faux pas once in a while. A few of you correct me on our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and our Twitch, and we're grateful for that. But we're entertaining you, and we do strive to have as accurate information as we can. Marty corrects me when I flub up a lot, so thank you all for doing that. But we want to make sure that you realize that we are coming to you from the delivery room of America's Space Age. We're just 9 miles from me. In the middle of the night at 12:30 on December 7th. We had the last moon mission going to the moon with astronauts Gene Cernan in command, Harrison Jack Schmitt, the only geologist to go to the moon, and orbiting the moon was Ron Evans, who passed away. Gino and Ron Evans aren't with us anymore, but here with us behind us is the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, one of my favorite things at the museum that I wanted to put up on our green screen, but I got to show off for live here. And I've seen these, Jessica and Marty, for sale for $200 or more at some high-end furniture places, all right? But this is the 135 steps that must go right to go to the moon, land on it, and then come back safely. Only 135 steps have to go right. Every one of them. One failure of that 135 could mean the end for the astronauts. And, of course, we saw that close call with Apollo 13. But we're talking about Apollo 17, and this Lunar Orbit Rendezvous involves several things, okay? One is the Earth is moving through space around the sun, of course, and we're turning at about 1,100 miles an hour. We're turning day and night. The diameter of the Earth is 25,000 miles. So if we're going 1,100 miles an hour, that's right. You divide 1,100 into 25,000, and you get about 24-hour day that's happening. I actually got us going backwards there, Marty. Surprised you didn't correct me there. I'm going east now, east and west. Of course, it could be like this in space, and that's right. So here we have the moon. Is a globe, and this is an 8-inch globe representing the Earth really well if 1 inch was 1,000 miles. So put that in your head. 1 inch is 1,000 miles, and we have an 8-inch globe of the Earth because it's about 8,000 miles in diameter. 7,926 miles to be exact, give or take a few miles depending on where you're standing. The Earth, the moon is going to be, this is a little bigger on this representation. This is 8-inch globe. 1 inch is 1,000 miles. This is about a 5-inch globe of the moon. The moon would be 2 inches across, 2,100 miles. And it orbits the Earth going at 2,100 miles around us. So it's going about 1,000 miles an hour faster than the Earth is turning on its day. So every day the moon is ahead of us, like the fastest car on the racetrack. And every 29 and a half days it laps us. Okay, it goes around one complete time, one revolution around the Earth. This motion is what I'm emphasizing, is the rocket science. You hear as smart as a rocket scientist. This is what they're talking about, is things in motion, celestial motion, and the mechanics of all that is very complicated. And, you know, it took our space age a good 10 years to figure it all out from the first time we started launching rockets to go into the moon. Now, 1 inch is 1,000 miles, okay? Today, 3 astronauts or cosmonauts were launched from Russia. They included 2 Japanese, a billionaire who's going up for 12 days with his buddy, apparently, who's a film director of sorts, as a test, because this Japanese billionaire is going to, he's already paid for a ride around the moon sometime in the next year, maybe the year after, on a SpaceX Crew Dragon. And this is a proposal that they go around and not land on the moon, but just orbit it and then come back. So we've got these 3 new astronauts docked this morning, or cosmonauts. By the way, his name is Yazuka Mazawi. We'll hear a lot about him in the future. And his production assistant, Yozo Hanari, and veteran cosmonaut Alexander Murskin of Russia docked this morning with the International Space Station at the new port, by the way, that they just said that Russia just set up on their part of the space station. They joined 7 other astronauts of Europe, of our Expedition 66, a couple Russians, European, and Americans up there. So that's 10 on the space station right now. And who else? What other humans we have orbiting the Earth right now? We have 3 tachionauts, Chinese astronauts, in their brand new space station orbiting the Earth. So we got 13 humans orbiting Earth. Guess what? Not a record. It ties for the record again. This record's been tied 3 or 4 times. We were hoping to get 14 up when they had the crew exchange between Crew Dragon 2 and 3, but that didn't work out. So 13 humans orbiting Earth at this very moment, the most we've ever had in space history. And we have our billionaire entrepreneurs in space talking about, we want hundreds of people to go up. Now, there will be an asterisk tomorrow, because there is going to be a launch of a Blue Origin New Shepard manned, where they're going to have 15, maybe 5 minutes of weightlessness on a 17-minute flight that includes the daughter of Alan Shepard, who did the first suborbital flight for America, and Hall of Fame football player Michael Strahan, who's well known on Good Morning America. He's going to be on that. Marty, he'll become the tallest person to go to space. Now, America defines space at 55 miles, and they're going to go above that line and have weightlessness. But the international line of space is the Kármán line of 100 kilometers or 62 miles. So, but it's still we're going to be watching it tomorrow morning. Love Michael Strahan. 5 other people are going up there with him, including, I think, I haven't researched this real well, but it's either a mother-daughter or it's a sibling, a parent and a sibling going up. It's a parent and a child going up together. But you'll be eat up with it tonight. So space is very much on our minds, and why we're doing this little program today, to emphasize it's not easy, and particularly going to the moon's a little bit hard. So as I have this model in front of me, I said 1,000 miles is 1 inch. The International Space Station is 250 miles orbiting the Earth right now. 250 miles, so 1,000 miles is an inch, that's right. 1/4 of an inch is what the space station is off. And I put that on the top. I've got 4 lines there drawn. You don't need to zoom in. You can get the idea of the line. The first line's 1/4 of an inch off the Earth. That's where the ISS is. The second line is where the Starlink communication satellites are, and 1 inch or 1,000 miles is where some surveillance satellites dwell, all right? But for 49 years, we have called space this 1/4 of an inch off of this 8-inch globe. Question there, Jessica.
Fractions, just little slivers comparatively.
Yeah. It's a fraction, and that's what we've called space, this first line, for the last 49 years. Now, we're going to go to real space. We're going to go to the moon. How far away is that? All right, my scale of 1 inch is 1,000 miles. Keep with me. The moon is an average 250,000 miles away. So if 1 inch is 1,000 miles, the moon is 250 feet away. Okay, almost a football field or soccer field. You can kind of put that in your mind. So if the ISS is 1/4 of an inch off the Earth, the moon is 250 feet away, almost a touchdown from one end zone in a, all right. Now we want to go to Mars. All right, Mars, let's all hop on Elon Musk's space starship and go to Mars, okay? Well, I'm not, because he ain't coming back. All right, number one. The distance to Mars at 1 inch is 1,000 miles. I'll just cut to the chase. It's 10 miles from where I'm sitting on this ratio. Over 50,000 feet, because Mars as an average is about 50 million miles away. And when we launch for Mars, it'll be 40 million miles to 50 million miles away. Take 9 months to get there. Then we have to stay on Mars for 3 months. So it's only a 9-month journey back. Now, if we develop faster propulsion systems, that will cut the time, of course. But I'm talking current propulsion systems. 9 months there, 9 months back, hang around for 3 months. And it is 10 miles away, where the moon is 250 feet away. Not 50,000 feet away like Mars. And we have called space the last 49 years is 1/4 of an inch off the Earth. So hope that kind of explains to you a little bit about how space is hard. The distances are incredible. Yet what we've accomplished is in the last 49 years in our space stations and so forth is really incredible. So let's get a little bit of more knowledge here about this going to the moon and back. Like I was telling Marty in a little pre-production meeting, is we've only put humans on the surface of the moon 6 times in 49 years. I think we can talk about it a couple of days on Stay Curious, because it only happens 6 times a year that we can celebrate it. Well, this is the final last hurrah, Apollo 17. There is the Lunar Module LM-12 in an artist concept, separating, as called America, separating from the command module, which I think was CSM 118. I could be wrong on that. I don't have my scroll, don't have my Apollo scroll in front of me.
I'll build you a scroll.
Yes, but it was called America appropriately. So we had Challenger on the moon and America orbiting the moon. How are we going to do that? Well, here's a little schematic. You have to account that the moon's moving, so you got to kind of aim ahead of it, like you would a target practice of a moving object, I guess. And the players are, of course, the Saturn V rocket that put us in Earth orbit, and then when things were checked out, they went to the moon, and then they landed, actually separated in 2 vehicles. In one vehicle that's called Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, where they rendezvous in lunar orbit, instead of direct descent. Direct descent is just going right straight down on a rocket ship and landing, and then blasting off on that same rocket ship. The concept that SpaceX has won the bid with Artemis to go back with their Starship. We'll see a picture of Starship in a minute. But here in 1960s is a gentleman who's a real unsung hero of the Apollo program, John Hobault. You space geeks know who he is. He was an Illinois professor, born in Iowa. And I want to elaborate a little bit on John Cornelius Hobault, who passed away in 2014. He was 95 years old, I believe, when he died. But he's credited with the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous that they adopted in July of '62. The debate was, do we just directly descend, have a big rocket, blast off, go to the moon, and not even orbit the moon, just land? Or do we have it orbit once and land? Or do we take 2 different spacecraft and one land while the other's orbiting, and then it goes up and it becomes disposable, of course, the lunar. the lunar module. Pardon me?
You had Earth orbit rendezvous also, that's the third option.
Yeah, Marty was getting with me here that we had Earth orbit rendezvous where they would orbit and take a rocket would take the whole the lander and an orbiter to the moon. Earth orbit rendezvous and then lunar orbit insertion was another one. Well, this guy fought vehemently because actually Wernher von Braun, the architect of the Saturn V, thought that his spacecraft would just, was the way to go, though he wasn't going to land the whole thing on the moon. And although the basics had been worked out of lunar orbit rendezvous in 1916 by a Russian and then a German rocket pioneer, Hermann Oberth, many of us have heard of, Hermann Oberth, also had this concept. Hobault presented it to the high-level panels of NASA. And when he was shot down, the chain of command, he ignored it. He was a rocket engineer at, not the Jet Propulsion Lab. He was in, which one was he at? I got it in front of me here. Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia is where he was from. So Associate Administrator of NASA Robert Siemens got a long letter from this guy attacking everything and detailing previous concepts and detailing why his way was best. And at one of the earliest NASA panels, Hobault in 1960 was attacked by Siemens and Wernher von Braun, in the presence of Siemens and Wernher von Braun, fellow engineer Max Faget, Faget, the architect of the Mercury and Apollo spaceships and the shuttle. He said that Hobault's, quote, his figures lie, he doesn't know what he's talking about. However, in this detailed letter to the Associate NASA Administrator, together with studies of the difficulties of funding as well as building a massive rocket bigger than the Saturn V and landing it on the lunar surface and then bringing it back, it was too much. And they adopted the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous in 1962. Von Braun embraced it. And the Saturn V rocket was not big enough. It would have required 2 or more such rockets or a heavier Saturn V to complete the mission in an Earth orbit rendezvous or anything else. So the rest is history. This man is actually celebrated on our bronze plaque out at the Space View Park. And he got to see the Apollo. He was invited to see the Apollo 11 launch. Remember in History, John Hobault, a book written by William Causey, details a lot about this rocket scientist who really changed the concept of going to the moon. Well, going back to the moon, let's talk about Artemis 3. This is landing on the moon in 2024, though in the latest public talking about this, Bill Nelson, our NASA administrator, said returning to the moon as quickly and safely as possible is our nation's priority, is NASA's priority. However, with the recent lawsuit, which Blue Origin sued, saying their concept was better than the space ship of SpaceX, that has the first moon landing under Artemis is likely no earlier than 2025. That's from NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. They need about $10 billion for the next 10 fiscal years for development. Going forward, Nelson said, NASA is planning at least 10 moon landings in the future, and the agency needs significant increases in funding for future lander competition, and starting with the 2023 budget. So this being 2022 budget that we're working in, because the fiscal year starts in October, then October is better have some big bucks in it for going to the moon, or we're not going to make it by 2025. But talking about 10 moon landings in the future, I like the idea of that. This is the Artemis 3 landing plan, and you see the gateway in the middle. Marty, how about your magic arrow there and showing me the gateway orbit, which is going to orbit the moon at a great distance to where that will be the outpost to where we will rendezvous with a small space station called Gateway, and that is where Orion and his crew will meet, supposedly, the Starship. Okay. Thank you, Marty. Here is the concept of the gateway. It's just a space station that they're going to have a habitat on there for when the astronauts come back to the moon. They can be decontaminated, get all that moon dust off of them type of thing. And there is the Orion docking with it right there. However, what's not in this picture, and I looked this morning for some pictures of the Starship docked with this, because that's what's going to happen. The crews are going to come from Orion and the SLS rocket, and then Starship's going to dock or be in serious lunar orbit. Or it's very vague to me how Starship's actually going to get to the lunar base. And I think it's vague to a lot of people, actually, because I spent a little time looking for what is the plan, and basically just come up with this. There is the Starship that we're going to land on the moon with. They better have a long rope, Marty, or long ladder, don't you think?
Elevator.
An elevator. Yeah, they'll probably put a fancy elevator in it there. And then you know what happens to elevators? They're going to get stuck in the elevator. Yeah.
You can't call Otis.
Can't call Otis. Nope, you can't call Otis to fix you in an elevator, that's for sure. But, seeing is going to be believing about this. I'm not a doubter, but I wonder if some of you out there scratching your heads going, really? And then this thing's going to launch off the surface of the moon. Now, we have seen the prototype testing going on in Texas of the Starship. Musk has taken this up to about 10,000 feet, I think, not much higher than that. And they have taken up that far and landed it. All right, so the engines are working to land this thing. The next phase, well, apparently, and you've all been reading the stories, Musk is cracking the whip, saying they're behind, threatening bankruptcy if they don't get this Starship in production quicker. And now they got the contract from NASA to do it. Hopefully all steam ahead. So it's been a while since we've seen a Starship out there in Texas do its thing. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of that. But this is how we're going back to the moon, folks. And that is the Orion spacecraft, the Orion, what are they calling that? Artemis 2 Artemis 1 is the flight that's going to be hopefully next year. We can't wait to see this whole launch platform go out to pad 39B, hopefully later this year. I've heard some rumors, December 29th, they might take it out there. Rumor. But that'd be nice to see it go out there before the first of the year. So we cannot confirm or deny there. But we hear a few things in our museum, and December 29th was being thrown around. Of course, they're going to do it in the middle of the night, so us taxpayers can't watch it, but ha. Maybe they won't, Marty, but they seem to always want to do these things at night for some reason. But they're going to haul it out there, and I'll be out there at the Merritt Island Refuge at the Cape Canaveral Wildlife Refuge, where you can get a good look at the pad out there, and we'll bring you pictures of that when that happens. Artemis 1 is going to do this. It's going to go on it's going to go on a flight around the moon, the uncrewed Artemis 1 flight. This is what I'm talking about, that they're going to haul out to the pad. It's going to loop around the moon, come back in. So critical to do that because the final trajectory from the moon is so different than going out of Earth orbit, and plus at 30,000 miles an hour. And there's the Artemis. They tested that was the X1. Heck, that's been about 10 years ago when they did the test on the heat shield. So, but let's get ending our program here. Hope you've learned something nice about the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous and an important man in the space program, John Hobault. We hope that you get out tonight and look at the moon. It's in a crescent phase. That bright star to the left of it's going to be Jupiter. The bright star near the horizon is Saturn. And in the middle the bright star near the horizon is Venus. And Saturn's in the middle of them. So go out there and get your little moonshine. Like I always say, the kind of moonshine that you can't get too much of. As we look at Lunar Module 12 on the moon, Marty, we're looking at quads 3 and 4 there on the back side of it. On the other side of it's where they've taken out the lunar rover. I kind of like these distant shots that the astronauts took. And I love this shot because there you've got Marty point to your lunar module number 19. And I say his lunar module because Marty sat inside the ascent. He sat inside the ascent stage of this vehicle. All right, how cool is that? And there's an astronaut in the middle there, who's that's obviously Harrison Schmitt, who's deploying the ALSEP experiments. That was his job. I put that in for you because when he worked, and of course he worked hard and did a great job for Grumman as an electrical engineer. But while the spacecraft, while he was in there doing his thing, he got to look out those triangular windows. And Marty, just imagine that you're looking out at the moon's surface there, like the astronauts were out those triangular windows that were kind of pointed down a little bit too, weren't they, Marty?
Yeah.
So that they weren't flat, they were at an angle, so you could look down and when they landed and see things there. But I always think that's cool. Our friend and great volunteer at the museum, Marty Winkle, looked out every window of those lunar modules, even the ones that are on displays there. And that's what the astronauts saw before they said, let's call it a night. 3 excursions, camping out 3 days on the moon, three-hour excursions. You know what? They didn't even take their spacesuits off because it was just too much work. They said, I'm just going to stay in it and sleep in it. And we'll have some stories about that tomorrow to help us all stay curious. And I think that's and wanted to end with this picture, the good old Earth. All right. As we're looking at the Earth, the phase of the moon is exactly the same, except on the opposite side. So when the moon is about first quarter, you're looking at where the Apollo astronauts landed along the Terminator there, with a beautiful rock there, the Earth, the moon landscape. What more could you ask for? Except maybe to come to our museum and witness some of the artifacts we have for yourselves here. So thank you, everybody, for being part of our program today. We've had some good visitors here from different parts of the country and the state. Hope you can be one of our visitors someday here at the American Space Museum. On behalf of Marty Winkle, Jessica Galloway, and our whole staff here, we here in the middle of December, not only wishing you well, wishing you happy holidays, but hoping that you can come to our museum soon on vacation and bridge the space between us. We'll see you then.